John Wayne Gacy, a name that would forever become synonymous with horror, deception, and the unimaginable evil that can hide behind a friendly smile. He was one of America's most notorious serial killers, a man who lived a double life, respected by neighbors, admired by politicians, loved by children at parties, and yet, beneath that facade, he was a monster who preyed on the innocent. Let's start from where it all began. John Wayne Gacy was born on March 17, 1942, in Chicago, Illinois. John Wayne Gacy was the only son among 3 children born to John Stanley Gacy, a machinist and World War II veteran, and Marion Elaine Robinson, a homemaker. His father was an alcoholic, often quick to anger and prone to violence. Gacy's childhood was marked by constant beatings, humiliation, and emotional abuse. One of his earliest memories was being punished severely at around 4 years old. His father struck him for touching some engine parts that didn't belong to him. His mother tried to protect him, but her efforts only made things worse. Gacy grew up feeling weak, unwanted, and constantly desperate for his father's approval, something he would never truly earn. As he got older, his health and confidence both suffered. He fainted often, was overweight, and became the target of bullying at school. His father saw these traits as proof of weakness, calling him names like sissy and mama's boy. These insults and the constant rejection from the man he idolized planted the earliest seeds of resentment and twisted identity that would later shape his monstrous behavior. In his teenage years, Gacy dropped out of high school and began drifting between small jobs. He worked in sales, then briefly as a mortuary assistant. According to later confessions, he once climbed into a coffin with a deceased teenage boy, fascinated and disturbed by the lifeless body. That night, something inside him changed forever. In 1964, Gacy married Marlyn Myers, a woman he met through work. They moved to Waterloo, Iowa, where he managed a fast food chain owned by her family. On the surface, life was perfect. A loving wife, 2 children, a boy and a girl, and financial stability. But behind the smiling father figure, dark impulses were quietly resurfacing. By 1968, Gacy was charged with sexually assaulting a teenage boy. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 10 years in prison, but served only 18 months before being released for good behavior. His wife divorced him while he was still in jail, taking the children and cutting all ties. Upon his release in 1970, Gacy moved back to Chicago to start over. His mother helped him buy a house in Norwood Park Township, a quiet suburb where he planned to rebuild his reputation. Outwardly, it worked. He became a respected community member, throwing neighborhood parties, running his own contracting business, PDM contractors, and volunteering for local causes. He even performed at children's events dressed as Pogo the Clown, his cheerful alter ego that would later become infamous worldwide. But while he wore the makeup and smiled for photos, his true self, the dark predatory side, was already beginning to surface again. In 1972, Gacy married again, this time to Carol Hoff, a former high school classmate. To neighbors and friends, he appeared to be a devoted husband and hard-working businessman. He entertained local politicians, joined civic organizations, and even had his picture taken with First Lady Rosalind Carter. To the outside world, he was the ideal citizen, the kind of man people trusted. But inside that same house on 8213 West Somerdale Avenue, he was building something far darker, a prison of nightmares that only he controlled. John Wayne Gacy's killing spree began in January 1972, just months after his second marriage. His first known victim was 16-year-old Timothy McCoy, a boy Gacy met at a Greyhound bus station. He offered him a place to stay for the night. The next morning, after a misunderstanding in the kitchen, Gacy stabbed the teenager to death. Later, he would say that at that moment, he felt the greatest thrill of his life. Over the next 6 years, Gacy perfected his pattern, a chilling ritual of luring, controlling, and killing. His victims were mostly young men and boys, often between the ages of 14 and 21. Many came from troubled homes or had run away. Gacy would offer them jobs through his contracting company, promise money, or simply pretend to be a friendly adult helping them out. Once he gained their trust, he'd bring them home, and the nightmare would begin. He often used what he called his magic trick. He'd show his victims a pair of handcuffs, pretending to demonstrate how they worked. Once they were restrained, the tone changed. The mask of friendliness fell away, replaced by sadistic control. He raped, tortured, and murdered his victims, usually by strangulation or asphyxiation. Some were chloroformed first. He took pleasure in their fear and helplessness, then buried their bodies in the crawl space beneath his house. When space beneath the floor became too crowded, he began dumping bodies into the Des Plaines River. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy murdered at least 33 boys and young men. He buried 26 of them under his house, 3 on his property, and dumped 4 others in the river. He continued his daily life as if nothing was wrong, attending barbecues, shaking hands with local officials, even performing as Pogo the Clown at community events. He smiled and joked with children, all while corpses decomposed beneath his feet. The smell in his home was terrible. Guests occasionally complained, but Gacy would brush it off, saying it was just a plumbing problem. No one imagined that the problem was actually dozens of rotting bodies. Gacy's downfall began in December 1978, when 15-year-old Robert Peast, a high school student, disappeared after telling his mother he was going to see Gacy about a potential job. He never came home. Police quickly discovered that Gacy had been the last person to see Robert alive. After several days of surveillance, they noticed odd behaviors. Gacy spending late nights digging trenches, pouring lime to mask smells, and acting increasingly erratic. Authorities obtained a search warrant for his property, and what they found would shock the nation. On December 21, 1978, police entered Gacy's home. The foul stench beneath the floor was unmistakable. As they dug into the crawl space, they uncovered the first body, and then another, and another. Over the next few days, investigators recovered 29 bodies from under his house. When questioned, Gacy finally broke down. On December 22nd, he confessed to killing more than 24 boys and burying them under his home, describing the acts in disturbing, casual detail, as though he were talking about fixing pipes. Gacy's trial began on February 6, 1980, and it was one of the most shocking in American history. He faced 33 counts of murder. His defense tried to claim insanity, citing multiple personality disorder and mental illness. But the prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of methodical planning. The luring, the restraints, the burial techniques, the cleanup. It was clear that Gacy knew exactly what he was doing. On March 13, 1980, the jury found him guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to death by lethal injection. While on death row, Gacy continued to attract attention. He painted disturbing portraits of clowns, including Pogo, and sometimes sold them to collectors. He even claimed he had been wrongfully convicted, insisting that others committed the murders. But the evidence was undeniable. His appeals ran out in 1993, and on May 10, 1994, at the age of 52, John Wayne Gacy was executed at Stateville Correctional Center in Illinois. His final meal was fried chicken, butterfly shrimp, French fries, and strawberries. His final words were chillingly defiant: "Kiss my ass." The property where his house once stood was demolished and leveled in 1979, an attempt to erase the physical stain of his crimes, though not the memory. Even decades later, Gacy's case remains one of the darkest chapters in American crime history. He wasn't a monster hiding in the shadows. He was the smiling neighbor, the community helper, the clown who made children laugh. He proved that evil doesn't always look dangerous. Sometimes it looks ordinary. The Gacy murders changed how police handled missing persons cases and how society viewed the hidden dangers within communities. To this day, some of his victims remain unidentified, a haunting reminder that justice, even when served, doesn't always bring closure. John Wayne Gacy's story reminds us that monsters don't always hide in the dark. Sometimes they smile, shake hands, and live right next door. Behind his painted smile as Pogo the Clown was a man capable of unimaginable horror. And even though justice caught up to him, the echoes of his crimes still haunt Chicago and the families who never got their sons back. Evil can wear a mask, but sooner or later, the mask always cracks. If you found this story chilling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because there's always another mystery waiting to be uncovered. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.